Spirit with Relendra. I'm Relendra, and today it's time for another installment of Real Talk with Relendra, where I, Relendra, get real while talking to you. And, well, what's the big subject? What's the only thing really worth talking about these days is trans. Let's talk about trans. Now, some of you watching or listening to me right now may not know this, but it turns out that I'm trans. Yes, it's a true story. And so I'm here to clear up any misconceptions that you may have about this subject that is breaking people's minds, and is really at the top of the list of basically problems that need to be solved. So that's the first thing to understand about trans is it's a problem. And it's a problem that, well, we need to do something about. Something, maybe something drastic. I mean, you could call it drastic, but it's not really drastic when you realize how big the problem is. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Relendra, why would anyone want to be trans? I don't want to be trans. So other people that want to be trans, like, what's wrong with them? Like, why are they broken? Are they like, they don't work right? And so, first of all, like, I want to confirm that, the correct way to think about it is like about wanting to be trans, because it's definitely something that you can just decide that you want to do. And that's really kind of how it works. But it really begs the question again, like, well, why would you want to do it? It just seems so weird and wrong. So let me back up a little bit. A lot of people think, and like, I've put out some articles. I put out a couple articles in the past about transgender spirituality, meditations on transgender spirituality, and the second one, which I'm forgetting the name of. I'll put the links in the show notes if you want to read them. But I'm here to tell you now that those articles were all lies. They're all part of my deceptive attempts to harm the world. And I'm just telling you now, because I have to. I made a promise to our Dark Lord. And one of the promises that I made was that at some point I have to do Revelation of the Method, where I get straightforward with everybody about all my secrets and my schemes and deeds. And so that's what I'm doing now. But I'll get back to that later. What I was about to say was that in articles like the ones that I've written before, this deception is put out that says that the transgender experience or transsexual experience, however you want to talk about it, is an experience that is deeply spiritual, that gender is something that is experienced as non-physical, where sex is physical and gender is a non-physical, could be something accounted as spiritual understanding that occurs personally. Or if you're the type of person who doesn't believe in the spiritual, something that's mental or emotional. But at any rate, what I'm explaining to you now is those are all lies and deceptions. The truth is that there's no such thing as trans, there's only deception. And so this is something that the freedom community, thankfully, I guess thankfully for humanity anyway, has learned, right? Has come to learn about the Great Deception, includes not only things about the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution and, all these plots and schemes for technocracy and transhumanism, but they've understood that transgender people are part of the great psyop, the great deception, this great attempt to harm humanity and invert it, to get everything just like backwards and to get people to harm themselves and be confused. And that's what this is really all about. And so you might wonder, well, if that's really what it's all about, Relendra, like, why do the trans people do it? Are they all just dupes? They're all just confused dupes. They're mentally weak people, mentally confused, broken people who just can't, like, we should pity them, right? That's like, we should pity them for their failings and their confusion and just like, it's kind of like being trans. It's like your life's pretty much over. You're pretty much a lost cause. I think that's the best way to think about it for most trans people, but not trans people like me, because I'm in like a different category. There's like basically two broad categories of trans people. There's the people who know and the people who don't know. So the people who don't know are the victims. They're the victims of people like me. So I'm somebody, essentially, those and people like me, we're in service of evil. And that's why we do what we do. That's why we chose to be trans. And so part of the evil that we're trying to do is to convince unwitting others to become trans and thus harm themselves and contribute to the great harming that we're trying to inflict on the world. Now, most trans people are the victims of the evil trans people like me. So, you might, a good metaphor for this is like with vampires. I don't know if you ever seen like The Lost Boys or, there's other vampire films and shows that have this kind of idea that there's a head vampire, and the head vampire like infects. That's a good word to use when you're talking about transgender, is infection. The head trans person or the head vampire infects other people with vampirism or transgenderism and pollutes and corrupts their minds and souls. But those people who have been infected in such ways, like, are essentially victims who had their lives ruined through deception and violent abuse from people like me, who are going around spreading all this propaganda about how, like, trans people should have like equal rights or like respect, or, be given the benefit of the doubt that they're actually not crazy but are experiencing something real. Those kinds of things, those kinds of lies that I like to propagate. So I think vampire is a good metaphor for understanding trans people, but really monster, I think any kind of monster, you're kind of on the right track. But vampire is a pretty good form of monster to understand. And it's just like with vampires, like, you never let a vampire in your house. If you invite a vampire in your house, then you're totally in the vampire's power. And the same thing goes with trans people. If you willingly invite a trans person into your life, you're going to be totally within their power. Pretty soon, you're going to start thinking that you're trans, and your life's just going to fall to pieces. As you try to just like cut off all your genitalias and like, inject yourself with hormones and just basically become a freak. So anyway, so I'm hoping that this is clearing things up, but it goes really deep. And so this is where it gets interesting. So you might be thinking, well, like, Relendra, why? I still don't understand. Why would you do this? If you know that there's no such thing as trans, and it's really just a great deception. Why would you do it to yourself? And so the answer is that I just hate women so much. Like, my hatred for women is so strong that I wanted to do the worst thing I could to women, which is to be trans. Like, I knew that that would just hurt women so much and provide me with so much satisfaction. So it's kind of like the Wicked Queen in Snow White. If you remember this character, she's so hateful of Snow White that she actually makes herself ugly. So she's like all concerned about being beautiful, right? So she's in this rivalry with Snow White about beauty. And she is so consumed with hatred and jealousy towards Snow White that in order to poison Snow White, she actually transforms herself into an ugly form to deceive Snow White into biting the poison apple. And so it seems ironic that the queen, who was so vain and so interested in beauty, would actually transform herself into ugliness because of her sort of diseased heart that just wanted to do evil. So that's kind of like a good way of thinking about me and how I am. I hate women so much that I took on the form of a woman. You know, even though I just hate it, I just like hate women so much. It's just like, you can't imagine like how like loathsome it feels to like turn your entire life upside down in order to assume the form of what you hate so much. But that's what I did because it's worth it. It's so worth it. You know, because like what I really want to do is like just deceive. I really love deceiving women, and just like anybody, really. And that's what it's all about. Like, I go through the world and people, you know, regard me as a woman and treat me as a woman. And inside, I'm just like cackling. I'm just cackling because it's like, oh, I've deceived you. I've fooled you. You're so fooled. And now my wickedness is just kind of satisfied. So that's one of the things that really motivated me to basically become what I hate the most in order to harm what I hate the most. And like I said, it's just worth it. I would like nothing more. There was nothing good that I wanted in my life that would be better for me than to devote my entire life to harming others, which is, of course, what your life is all about when you're trans. You're just harming the world, harming others. And for me, I really wanted to just harm women. You know, I wanted to get into like all the women's sports and just, you know, mop the floor with the women, you know, who are competing against me, because I can actually. You know, you may not realize this. Like, you would think, you know, like, what, I'm like 5'8", you know, I don't work out, like I don't really play sports, but I can destroy any woman in competition, like even at the elite levels. You know, like just put me into women's sports and I'll take the trophy, because they can't compete with my man genes and like my big, strong man body, you know, that like, even though it doesn't seem that big and doesn't seem all that strong, well, you'd be surprised, you know, like I could take somebody like Ronda Rousey, you know, one of these like really, really big and powerful women, or, you know, the greats, you know, if you could think of like the tennis greats, like Serena Williams, you know, if it was back in the day, you know, I used to play Serena Williams, and I never lost a game, you know, and she would play me because she was always looking to try and test herself against the highest competition, which is a trans woman, just any trans woman off the street. Yeah. So I really want to destroy women's sports. That's important to me. and just like infiltrate like women's spaces. There's nothing gives me more pleasure than that. It's just like what my sick heart desires. Okay, hold on. I'm going to level with you. I didn't really do this because I hate women. I actually did it because I hate children. What I really hate, as much as I hate women, I hate children even more. And so I knew that like by making myself the model of, let's say, a successful trans woman, by presenting this example of myself, and by being responsible and kind and thoughtful and really like all the good qualities that I have, if I can present the world, and it's all about deception, remember, I'm deceiving people into thinking that like I'm an upstanding, fine person that you would like to know, but I'm not. Actually, I'm pretending to be that so I can fool children into thinking that they should be trans. And I want to convert them. So just looking for more victims. Like I was saying before about how like trans people, like those of us in the know, the ones that are the monsters, like the head monsters, that is like, I mean, all trans people are monsters is really sort of the takeaway here. But I'm always looking for fresh victims, and nothing satisfies me more than if those victims are children, right? So I like to confuse children's minds so that they'll destroy their lives and just be so confused. And then I just go home and I laugh myself to sleep. Even as like awful as it feels to be in this form and role of the woman, because I hate women, but it's so satisfying to harm women and to harm children that I do it anyway. Well, okay. I'm going to level with you again. It's not really about harming children. That's not really the reason I chose to be trans. The real reason I chose to be trans was because I'm in service of the transhuman agenda. See, the thing to understand about being trans is that it's a Trojan horse for transhumanism. What I want to do is subvert human biology so that people will become accustomed to accepting human modification, so that we can merge with machines and computers and become gods, just like Yuval Noah Harari talks about in his book, Homo Deus, right? Or just like Klaus Schwab talks about with the fourth industrial revolution that's going to change you. You're going to get computer chips installed in your brain and all your DNA is going to be modified. But you'd be like, wait a minute, Relendra, like I started following you, perhaps maybe you started following me because I was speaking out against what was going on with the COVID tyranny and the fourth industrial revolution agenda of the World Economic Forum and all that stuff. And the mRNA and all those things. Like I was a voice that was, cautioning against such things and saying like, hey, watch out, like this isn't a great thing for humanity. And it's certainly not good to impose it on people, because like people should have freedom of choice over their bodies. I thought that's what you were about, Relendra, but now you're telling me that you're actually in service of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. Well, that's really very simple. I'm controlled opposition. And all trans people that aren't actually hapless victims, which is most of them, but all the ones that are not are controlled opposition. Well, at least the ones who are supposedly on the side of freedom and human sovereignty, like me. I'm controlled opposition. So there's so many of us. There's Alex Jones, David Icke, Donald Trump, Matthias Desmet, Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough, Elon Musk. Like, you can go down the list of all the controlled opposition people, and we're all just here. We're all just part of the Great Deception plot to confuse you, the hapless victim. And again, you're like, wait, why are you telling me this again, Relendra? Remember, revelation of the method. I have to tell you my evil plans. I'm required. Wait a minute, Relendra, why are you required? This doesn't make sense. Well, that kind of leads me to my next thing. This isn't really about transhumanism. It's not about the Trojan horse, where I'm trying to, get people to accept that people can have a gender transition or a sex change. Because like the real agenda is just to, force people to change their bodies and put surveillance chips inside their brain. So it reports your thoughts to Google and then changes your thoughts from the inside out. Even though I do want those things, because I am evil, even though I do want those things, that's not the real reason I'm doing this. It's not the real reason I'm trans. The real reason I'm trans is because I'm a Satanist. I sold my soul to the Dark Lord. I'm a Luciferian. And those of you who have started studying this have probably realized that we Luciferians and Satanists, 6 and 1/2 dozen the other, right? We are required to participate in revelation of the method. At least once. At least once we have to publicly tell people, here's my plan. This is what I'm doing. And later we can lie about it. Later we can deny it. But we have to say it once at least. And then according to the pact that we've made, because even though we are in service of evil, it's like a lawful evil. When you think of the Dungeons and Dragons kind of grid, it's a lawful evil where we have to obey certain laws in order to be rewarded by our Dark Lord after we die. So one of those laws is that we have to do revelation of the method. We have to put you on notice about the evil that we're doing. We have to explain how it works. We have to let you know that we're doing it. And that gives us absolution. We're now absolved. We're not going to be punished or harmed for doing evil. In fact, it's no longer evil. It's actually your free choice because you've been warned. You've been put on notice. And so that's how we can do evil without it being evil. And in fact, by doing evil without it being evil, we're actually doing good. How is this, you ask? Well, by providing people with a temptation to do evil things like being trans, we're acting sort of in service to your free will. Okay? So you can't really have free will without being tested. And the function of we Luciferians and Satanists is to test you and see if you can resist our evil. And if you can resist our evil, then you can be good and you can, go to heaven or whatever happens to good people. I don't know. I don't even think about that stuff anymore because I'm destined for hell on purpose. That's what I want to do, except it's not going to be hell for me. It's going to be good for me because I made that pact with our Dark Lord. So yeah, I received my instructions after I sold my soul, and I said, Dark Lord Satan, Baphomet, Lucifer, what is thy command to me? And the Dark Lord said, I want you to be trans. I want you to go out there and participate in inversions. We love inversions. We Luciferians and Satanists, we love inversions. That's another thing that you should learn about us if you haven't learned it already. We love inversions And what better inversion than to invert gender? The most foundational, like, obvious thing. Now, you may think that, like, okay, there's gender and then there's sex, right? Like in the Spanish or French languages, every word has a gender. They don't have a sex, right? I could have a word for an idea or a pen or a tabletop or a wink or a nod, or any noun you could think of has a gender in these languages. And in most languages, English is one of the few that doesn't have genders. And then, part of my dastardly plot to confuse people is to say that human beings can have genders too, which are not the same as what their sex is. And that it's a different thing, just like with these languages where words have genders that have nothing to do with sex because they're just words, they don't have a sex. That's a lie. Everyone knows that when it comes to human beings, there's no difference between sex and gender. Gender equals sex. And so this transgender agenda is designed to confuse people, to turn them against themselves, to turn them against their own bodies, and to get them thinking that up is down and black is white and good is bad and right is left. All of that stuff. That's what I'm all about. That's what I love. I love it. And that's part of revelation of the method too. Like over here, I'm saying one thing, and then over here, I'm doing another thing. And you're like, Relendra, you're over here, you're over there, you're a man, you're a woman. What are you? We don't know. We don't understand. Can I trust you? Are you for freedom or are you for Klaus Schwab? You saying you're for one and you're for the other? How can you be for freedom of bodily sovereignty and still be for trans freedom of bodily sovereignty? Those things don't add up, right? They're in contradiction. My position that people should be free to have their own ideas, their own spirituality in their own bodies, and everything that goes along with it, that sovereignty idea. Well, how can you believe that and still support being trans and support trans people and doing the same thing and be trans yourself? You're confusing us. Because you being trans and trans people being trans is people doing with their bodies what they want to, and they should be stopped. We need to stop it. We need to stop them because it's all part of the bad agenda that's turning people away from God. And all I can say is, yes, you're right. It makes total sense what you're saying. The freedom of the body when it comes to medicine is totally different from freedom of the body when it comes to gender and sex, which also involves medicine. It's totally different. One kind of medicine, when it comes to, taking shots from pharmaceutical companies, you don't dare say the magic words, you never know when you're going to get booted off. And I want people to see this, right? Because it's part of my pact with the Dark Lord, the revelation of the method. Yeah, that's different. Like, sovereignty should exist in that area, but we have to stop the trans agenda. Sovereignty should exist in having the freedom of conscience to believe what you want, but we need to stop the trans agenda. So anyway, it all makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, actually. And don't be fooled by my lies, right? This is real talk with Relendra. This is where I give it to you straight. You might ask though, like, wait, Relendra, why would you want to be evil? Why would you sell your soul to Lucifer? We can understand it with rock stars and pop stars and politicians and billionaires. We understand those guys because they get rewarded with riches and fame and power by selling their soul to Lucifer. But what about you? Well, yeah, I'm not rich, I'm not famous, I'm not powerful. I'm under deep cover. I'm under deep cover as a controlled opposition agent to spread the dangerous disease of transgenderism around the world. And what better way to spread this disease than by assuming the false cover identity as someone who stands for medical freedom? But I guess that didn't answer your question. Why would I do this? Why would I be so devoted? If I want to harm women and I hate women, like, why would I take the form of a woman and the role of a woman? You would think I would hate that. But we've already talked about that. It's the same thing. It comes down to the same thing. I'm evil in my heart. I'm evil and twisted in my heart, and I want to do harm. It's as simple as that. Some people are just born bad, and I'm one of them. How can you tell if people are born bad? Well, one way is if they're trans, right? So don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by us. We're trying to confuse and humiliate you, because it's really what I do with my life and my body is really, it's all about harming you. I think that's the important thing to understand here. And yeah, so it's been great that these past few years that the freedom community has adopted this anti-trans plank, by getting wrapped up in conservative right-wing things, because the left wing, was all for the COVID mandates and that kind of stuff. And then the right wing was resisting it. So therefore, everything that the right wing believes is now true. And everything that the left believes is wrong. That's how simple this is. That's exactly how simple this whole thing is. And we all know that left-wing people support queer people. They support trans people and gay people. And don't be fooled. We know that stuff is sinful and bad and wrong. It's, even if it's, there's things in the Bible that say that. And so therefore, we know that that's the one true religion, is the one that's reflected in what's written in the Bible. And, even though we're all constitutionalists and we believe in freedom and freedom of religion, it's important to try and impose the one true religion on everybody, especially when it comes to being queer, and especially when it comes to being trans. And what's really important is, don't try to put yourself in a trans person's shoes. That's a trap. Don't try to have empathy for a trans person. That's a trap. Don't try to imagine, what would it be like to be trans? That's a trap. Don't try to give the benefit of the doubt to a trans person. That's a trap. Right? Don't try to think, hey, what if trans people honestly and sincerely experience something that's real? What if that's actually happening? And maybe that's what explains why people are transitioning. That's a trap. Don't do it. Hold the line. Stay strong. Praise God. And God bless America. And remember, just remember everything that I told you. I'm working for the devil to cause evil, to cultivate evil, to cause evil, because I have an evil heart. And I'm like a monster, something like that. Anyway, I think you can fill in the rest. So this is my public service announcement. From here on out, I'm going to go back to deceiving and inverting everyone with my lies and my tricks, and try to get the whole world to mutilate themselves and be confused and harm women and children and convince everyone to be transhumanist, androids, or whatever is going to happen in the future. So you've been warned. And if you want to go to heaven, just try to remember everything I said. Okay. Love you all. Take care. Bye.